since Marco Rubio dropped out, we've seen people who were kind of looking for an establishment figure going to Ted Cruz. In fact, I told Lindsey Graham this week I thought I would see pigs fly before he ever got behind Ted Cruz. But take a look at what Senator Graham told me.
John Kasich, I think, is the most viable general election candidate. I just don't see how John gets through the primary. This is an outsider year. He's seen as an insider. So I think the best alternative to Donald Trump to stop him from getting 1237 is Ted Cruz.
So, Governor, what do you make of this notion that it's time to rally behind Ted Cruz because it's mathematically impossible for you right now to win the nomination?
Well, I don't think anybody's going to have enough delegates, Dana, to tell you the truth. And I think we're going to go to a convention, which is really an extension of the political process. And when we get there, the delegates are going to think about two things. Number one, who can win in the fall? And I was glad to hear Lindsey say Kasich's the best general election candidate because I don't think the other two can win. And secondly, now this is a crazy idea, who actually could be president of the United States and do a good job? When the delegates think about that, I think we will do very well, and we will go to the convention with momentum. So, you know, maybe what they ought to think about is consolidating behind me, because I thought the purpose of this was to win the presidency and to beat Hillary Clinton. Maybe somehow I didn't get the memo, huh?
Maybe not, but let's talk about the process right now, because at this point it is all about gobbling up as many delegates as you can to have the momentum you just talked about and to keep Donald Trump from getting more. Do you believe there is any way you and Ted Cruz could work in a coordinated fashion from now through June to prevent Trump from getting the nomination?
I don't see how. Look, Dana, here's the thing. Everybody is focusing on process, okay? Delegates here, delegates there. Everybody's got to face the fact that we're going to an open multi-ballot convention. That's where we're headed. And the convention is an extension of what we're going through right now. And so I've been at a convention that was contested in 1976. What happens is the delegates will take everything seriously. They will take a look at people's experience and their electability. Okay, and that's fine. I don't know what's everybody so panicked about this. Everybody needs to take a little chill pill, to tell you the truth.
Okay, but while they're taking that chill pill, they also are trying to figure out the best scenario to get to what you just talked about.
Who is they? So, by the way, who is they? Who are these they?
There are a lot of Republicans who are very worried about this. Let me just put this out there.
Well,
one scenario that I have heard is a split the map scenario. You focus from now on the East, where you do quite well. Ted Cruz focuses on the West, where he does better, to try to keep Donald Trump's delegate count low through the convention. Is that a strategy you or anybody on your team would pursue?
Not at this point. We're not thinking that way. I'm thinking that we're getting momentum, and I can go East and I can go West. You know, think about California and me, okay? You know, I've got positions that unify people. And, you know, the fact is, let's talk about some of the people that have joined me. Charlie Black, he's one of the most skilled political people you can find in America. Vin Weber, another one. Tom Ridge, the former governor of Pennsylvania. I mean, Mike Leavitt out here in Utah. I mean, these are people who are very skilled and very experienced, and they believe that we just ought to keep going along, as I do, and get to the convention, and then, you know, conventions are cool things.
So
we're going to learn a lot
just
when
to
we
put a
get
button on this, Governor, there are no conversations, you're not interested in any conversations to coordinate with Ted Cruz, since there's only 3 people in the race, to try to keep the guy who's got by far the most delegates, Donald Trump, from getting even more?
Look, we always talk, Dana, you know that, if somebody wants to call and discuss things, but you got to understand that this is sort of a mission for all of us. And it's not just me, it's the team. We had people from 22 states who are working phone banks in the state of Ohio. These are people who believe that America can be better and that America can be really terrific, and that people can have better wages and better jobs. I mean, if somebody wants to talk to me, I'll be willing to listen to them, but where am I not going to go? And why would I not go there? I mean, explain that to me. I believe that the message and the experience and the vision I have matters in this country. And you know, the message that the people watching today in the living rooms, that they can change the world in their neighborhoods, in their communities, and in their families, that's a message I think people ought to hear. And I think it's a positive and a message that gives people hope. And I'm going to keep saying it until I can't say it anymore. How's that?
I know that. I've heard you say it, and you're going to continue to say that, and that is your message. But I want to.
There's one other thing.
Sure.
One other thing.
Okay.
You know, people wanted me to drop out. They were all going to get behind Rubio, right? And he's gone. I'm still here. You know what would have happened had I dropped out? You know who would have won Ohio? I won Ohio. I didn't win Ohio in any calculation. I won Ohio because of my message and my record. And guess what? As a result of that, Donald Trump is not going to go to the convention with enough delegates.
Governor Donald Trump warned this week that there would be riots in the street if he walks onto the convention floor, and he has the most delegates, and he's denied the nomination. You've called this unacceptable language, and it pulls people apart. But why should party leaders and not the voters choose the nominee?
Well, Dana, they will. You got to get to the magic number to be the nominee. Okay, and if Trump goes in there with a big number, maybe he'll get it. But you know, the Republicans have had 10 conventions like this, and only 3 times has the person going into the convention with the most delegates won. You see, when you get to a convention, the delegates will take this very seriously, and they will examine electability, and they will examine who can be a great president, who is the best person, and who, you know, I mean, frankly, who can win in the fall, as I've just mentioned. So, you know, I don't think that kind of language is appropriate to talk about violence and rioting. I know you don't, okay? That's inappropriate. I will also tell you the threats on Donald Trump's family is outrageous. They have no right to be threatening his family. So why doesn't everybody just realize that we're better in America when we're together and we're unified? And if you go to a convention and you lose, be a big enough person to say, I gave it my best and I didn't win. That's what I would say if I didn't.
You likened the fight against ISIS to the fight against the Nazis this week. Are you prepared to put U.S. troops on the ground and go it alone if that's what it takes?
Well, no, look, Dan, I've been talking about this for, I don't know what, a year or something like that. I made many major foreign policy speeches. Look, the bottom line is that we can unify the world. Our Arab Muslim friends in the Middle East, no, they have an existential threat. So do the Europeans. I believe we can assemble a coalition just like we did in the first Gulf War. We can. We will. We will be in the air and on the ground, and it will get done. I promise you, it will get done. I have been involved. I've seen it. I know how to do it. And we're not going to go alone because it's not what we're going to have to face.
Okay, end on a kind of a fun note. This week, you had an event that went viral. Your confetti from the primary night in Ohio. What was with all of that confetti?
Well, here's what happened. My advance guy, Trepepi, blew it the first time with a weak confetti shot. And so, you know, it was like porridge. He went from too cold to too hot. And all I can say is, you know, I don't want that much confetti again. We should have shot it out in the crowd. But I didn't know it went viral. That's pretty cool. My daughters and my wife will like that.
Are you still picking confetti out of your ears and out of your
I have
hair?
it on my shoulder. Yes, I had it a little bit on my shoulder. But it was, you know, it was a lot of fun. And I have to tell you, Dana, in Cleveland, the raw emotion about that victory was so overwhelming to me. And, you know, I go to these big rallies or what happened in Cleveland, and frankly, I just feel so humbled by the support that we see, and I'm going to do my best, my very best, not to let people down. Look, I'm just a weak, flawed man like everybody else, but I'm going to do the best I can to have the strength I need to lead this country and give people hope.
Governor, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Dana.